Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beating the Drum Today with CyberGriotz, where we blend the West African storytelling styles of griots with modern-day cyber narratives. Today's episode features Jamiu Akande, a cybersecurity consultant and community builder whose career spans Nigeria, the UAE, and the UK. Jamiu is also the founder of the organization Cybersecurity in OpenSource, where he provides zero-cost services and support to cybersecurity startups. Stay tuned while I come back and we'll be chatting up with Jamiu. Hi, Jamiu, and welcome to Beating the Drum with CyberGriotz. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Hamid. Good to be here. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for making the time. I know we kind of try to do this, like we tried several times and the schedules didn't work out and all of that. So I appreciate that we finally are getting some time in together, and I couldn't be happier to chat up with you and, hear some cyber stories from you as well. As you know, the theme of this show is, we bring on guests, but the whole point of it is to kind of get, to tell some of our cyber narratives, where our journey has been and so forth. So that said, I know I did a little bit of an introduction of you already, but I always love it when my guests say it in their own words. So I would love to hear like your journey into, cyber and how you ended up here today. So
Yeah, good to be here, Hamid. I'm so excited to be here. It's quite interesting. I know we've been going back and forth trying to, create a time, and it's been a very busy time. I mean, I'm currently doing a lot of stuff, which I'll be discussing and talking about today as well. But I mean, just to give a brief intro about myself, as you have said, my name is Jamiu. I'm a cybersecurity consultant based in London, and I currently do more of technical stuff within the consultancy space. Right. Apart from that, I am also the founder of Open Source and Cybersecurity. Pretty much what we do is to provide free cybersecurity services and support for early stage startup. I think we are in a very different world, right? Because you can look at Google, Microsoft, Amazon. These are companies that started as interesting and innovative early stage startup back in the days. But then the threat to them wasn't as massive as we currently have today, right? We have amazing new technology, new innovative startup founders trying as much as they can to build a better world for all of us. And then we are in a world right now whereby the cyber threat is going really, really crazy. And, I was just thinking of how can we make sure that these innovative startup founders are getting the cybersecurity support, from we within the community. So it's pretty much just giving back to those innovators, that are trying to build the world or build a better place for us. So, I mean, that's how we started open source in cybersecurity. Pretty much.
awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot more about that when we get to our community section segment. There's something interesting about you, obviously you and I, because we come from, pretty much we have African origins and so forth. I do want to start just by, how, especially like at least in the time I grew up, computers wasn't a thing like as much as it is today. Right now, almost every kid in the neighborhood has a mobile phone and mobile device and all these things. How did you like, I want to hear your experience on or what your story looks like from your perspective. At least from mine, like I got a little bit of exposure like way later, almost like to high school and beyond before I started touching computers, right? So I was just wondering like how you kind of navigated that like in Nigeria, if it was different or, compared to Ghana.
I mean, it was kind of a little bit different for me because I come from I come from how do I describe it? My parents, they weren't that rich, right? We are kind of, if I'm being honest, we are kind of poor. Let me put it that way. So, I mean, it's different for everyone, right? It's not everyone within, our community in Nigeria, even where I stay within the local community. I have, kids that have laptops and desktop as of then, but I do not get to have any of that. But there's something that I had, right? I have a bit of mentorship, or I have mentorship. Let me put it that way. I think mentorship has been the most critical part of my life. So back in the days, I have a brother who is like 12 years older than myself, and he was studying computer science as of then. And it was just like, oh, this is computer, blah, blah, blah. This is what they do. And then it came home at some point and it brought a lot of books. And those books were Java books, Java programming books. And I don't know, for some reason, I just fell in love with those books and I started to read them. I don't have a laptop. I don't have anything. I just took the books and I was reading,
when we
Java
coded on paper, right? Do you remember when we wrote code on paper? I wonder how we were debugging that and all that, but we did it somehow.
Really, really crazy, to be honest, because, like you've said, right, we write the code on paper. Later on, I mean, at the beginning, I didn't even write the code. I was just reading. I don't even know what I was reading. Right? I was just reading and reading. Later on, we started to write the code in papers and started to run it on other people's computers. But as of then, that was when people started to call me, I don't know, maybe you noticed, my nickname was Java. And that's why.
Oh, I did. I saw that in some places. Okay, that's interesting.
Java, because then when everybody see me with the book Java, and that's how everybody just started to call me Java, and then my nickname became Java.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Java, and that was how I started, to be honest. And I was just learning programming, and then moved to. So I mean, I never had those kind of those laptops or computers of then, but yeah, I just had those kind of how do I call it, a mentorship, or someone that just say, oh, this is interesting, have a look at it, and then I just fell in love, and that was how I started.
Yeah. As much as you might think the story is different, it's very similar. Like, we didn't have access to those, I think. And then you said something which I have very similar experience, because one of my older brothers was studying like a, long distance, like computer programming or whatever. And I remember he was learning, it was like COBOL or something. And, we were just like, I would just tag on and watch him do whatever he's doing. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is. But I remember writing, like there was something he was doing. I remember writing an echo statement, like, like in a command line, and said echo and then my name. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is where I belong. Like, I need to do this. So yeah. Thank you for that insight. That's actually very good story to hear. Now I want to dive into consulting, since you're mostly in consulting. Like, what do you consider, because different people have different definitions of what they see as cybersecurity consultant. What would you say from your perspective, having done this for a while, what would you consider a cybersecurity consultant?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not that, even though I've been in consulting for some time, right? I think the interesting thing that I found about consulting is actually the amount of importance that we place on value-driven environment, right? All the time, what you hear all the time is, how can you add value to the clients? How can you add value to the clients? And I think that's one thing I've learned to understand, working with different clients over the years, and just try to, so sometimes they might say, oh, this is XYZ that you are asked to do here, right? But apart from that, you have to think based on value, right? Because sometimes the white and black is so clear that, oh, this is XYZ that we have to do, but you're thinking on how can you make impact within this space? How can you add value within this space? And I think one other thing that have also been very, very interesting to me in consulting is the kind of people that you get to work with. I mean, a lot of times you meet quite an amazing set of people that have the same kind of mindset. I think it's a kind of a filter, that just brought us into the space and then keep us together in that space. I was discussing with a colleague of mine, just like a few weeks ago, and he was saying that, oh, he is thinking of, oh, can we do? So we're actually building, we are writing some detection within the web application firewall, and bot detection. And he was thinking of, how can we create a testing lab that we can use so that you don't have to wait for the logs to come in, that you could just test exactly what you've deployed, immediately. And, that he has to look at, if he can just build like a testing suite. And I think that was really, really interesting. And he said something, that actually was, that I found very interesting. He said, I'm just thinking of, something we can do for the client that, no matter what, they'll keep thinking about us, even if we are not on
once you're gone. That's a good segue into, my next question, which is, how do you know, in terms of how clients translate the value that you provide, right? I know it may be different from different client. Like, how do you know, okay, you leave this engagement and you're like, yep, we're satisfied with the results, the client is satisfied with the results, and there's going to be an ongoing partnership?
I mean, it's all I think this is something that you have to define when you are on such a project, right? Because if you are working with a team, you know what are the bottlenecks, you know what are the challenges, you know what are the things that they're actually struggling with. And that's when you start to look at how you can help them to solve it. For example, a case whereby I'm talking about my colleague talking about, oh, how can we build a test suite for them so that we can test immediately? So this is what we do. Our job is pretty much just to, do analysis and to optimize a platform for web application and API protection platform. And he was thinking of building a test suite. And this is because the environment, whenever we optimize any kind of config and we deploy them, we have to wait a little bit to get those traffic. And this is the challenge that the client face. We that we are working on consultancy on the project as well. That is the challenge that we face. And he was thinking that, okay, if we can build a test suite, this is going to help in the long term, right? So it's about the environment, getting there and understanding what are they struggling with and how can we help them to minimize those struggle and resolve those kind of challenges.
Makes sense. And as cybersecurity professionals, one of the biggest things we deal with is the culture and mindset, like mindset shift in enterprises and businesses. I'm wondering how you balance, because a lot of our work we do in cybersecurity is like a lot of technical solutions and so forth, right? Like, how do you balance like delivering those technical solutions with your clients and, considering the mindset shifts that and cultural shifts that a lot of those enterprises may need to have?
I mean, most of the time is about showing them what the value looks like, right? Sometimes they don't know exactly why they need to change, but if you're able to show them, and one thing that I've learned to understand in consultancy is this, right? You can't just give an advisory on something and say, oh, you have to change. And I think that's what a lot of people do, that I think it's a mistake. They want to change something within an environment, right? Within a client environment, and then they make a suggestion to the client, right? We don't do that, right? You have to document those things, right? You have to possibly make a PowerPoint presentation for it, right? And book a time
Understand
to
the
actually
business.
present it to them, right? And then when you are done presenting it to them, you send a follow-up email saying that this is the challenge, this is the solution we proposed to you on call, this is the PowerPoint presentation and the documentation, copy everyone involved and send it. That way, it drives further conversation because now they are responsible to kind of reply you, kind of look deeper into it, kind of evaluate, what are the challenges that you've identified. And that way, they get to understand it more clearly than just saying that, oh, hey, client, I see X, Y, Z that you are doing that is this. That way they kind of, if they have personal opinion about it, they kind of push back. But you are responsible to make sure that you explain it to them in a way that they understand. I think that's something I learned even before I joined consultancy. I think when I was working at on diplomatic mission back in Nigeria with a foreign country, and my who is like what do you call it again? It's not the ambassador there anymore. It was like
The counselor,
the consular officer.
Yeah,
was like
you're making it very easy for me because that was my next segment. I was just about to get into. Like, I was gonna get into segment into culture and collaboration.
Yeah,
and my intro. You have a weird, like, really nice background, like, and it's like working across several countries and continents, right? And for different kinds of groups, like government agencies and diplomatic missions, UAE, Nigeria, UK. How has all of that influenced, like, your thought process in terms of cybersecurity, how we deal with that across different regions, or if there's any difference?
I mean, there's massive difference, right? The culture is different. Like I was saying in terms of the consular officer, then who is like who is like the head of the visa center that we had then back in Nigeria for the United Arab Emirates. And he said something to me. I mean, then I was just like starting out. I was just like maybe 4 years into my professional experience, and he said something to me then that he said, if you have an idea, it is your responsibility. So if you believe that that idea is the right thing for us to do, it is your responsibility to make sure that I agree with you on that particular idea. It's not like you're just going to say, oh, this is an idea of thing that you think we should do that will make, the whole practice better. and you just leave it at that. You have to be persistent. You have to make sure that you drive those conversations to the point whereby I sign off on it. It is your responsibility to make sure that I sign off. He told me that he knows he's
So
going to be the
basically,
one to
convince
sign off.
me.
Yes, but
Why
you
do I
have to
need this?
but you have to convince me. It's not like you just say it once and you just leave it like that, right?
Yeah.
If you truly believe in it, you have to make me sign off on it. And something I learned about that conversation was this, right? If you truly believe in something, if you've done your own work, if you've done your research, if you think that thing is going to work, you will push and push and push to make it work. But if you have not done that, there is a big possibility that you are not going to push. And most
Yeah.
of the time, when you suggest something for him the first time, he's going to say no. But he wants you to come back because you
And
coming
convince him.
back gives him the sign
So,
of,
so it sounds like he's more data driven and fact based, right? Like, give me the data, give me the facts to go with that, and then I'll do that. What would
exactly.
you, and that's interesting as a leader, right? What would you say are some of the like cultural factors that as leaders we tend to either overlook when we roll out cybersecurity solutions?
Um, I think, I've seen different kind of projects and how, I've seen how projects were started. There's so much, believe that this project is gonna be really, really interesting, and with time they get to dump it and stuff like that. Or they're doing project that, at the end of the day, the value wasn't that great, and people, maybe the teams were not that using it as much. And with time, you just see that it drifts away from using it entirely. I think it's about making sure that what you want to do is it going to add the value to the guys on ground.
Yeah.
I think this is what I've seen. I've worked with like in places that we are doing sub transformation projects, and you see so many tools that they've bought, and they were not really using it. You'll see different kind of tenants of like seeing data collectors, different kind of stuff all over the place, and that those guys were not really using it. They even forgot that in some places they forgot about it. They have a tenant whereby they are collecting some logs and they just didn't
Yeah.
touch it, didn't do anything about it. And it's just crazy. And you just think that, oh no, why is this happening? I think it comes back to your guys. Do they understand what the use of
Makes
this is
sense.
for?
Makes sense.
And does it really make any kind of value to them? Because most of the time, the teams, if they don't see value in it, there's no point for them to, go check it or make any kind of
Yeah. And when you
use
say
of it.
value, you mean in terms of the business, right? Or in terms of like the cultural differences and understanding even what security is. And the reason I say this is because, like I think the culture in different places has some kind of factor or play in terms of how we deal with cybersecurity, right? The problems we face in, say, Nigeria or Ghana may be different from, say, what we face in the UK or the USA. So and that's where I was going with that question. Like, do we think it makes a difference? Like, being culturally aware as a professional, like where you are, like these are the issues that they really have or face. Although we have the baseline, which is usually what every business faces as far as cybersecurity is concerned.
When it comes to, I see where the question is coming from now. Right? When it comes to those kind of culture, I think there's not so much of difference, to be honest, right? Either in Nigeria, Ghana, UAE, or UK or US, right? I think most of the time what happens is industry, rather than, where you are coming from. It doesn't matter if you are coming from Nigeria working in fintech or you are based in London working in fintech. The same culture, is what you see all the time, right? If you are working in e-coms, maybe in US and in UK, it's almost the same all the time. That's what I've noticed, right? So there's not much of difference in it. It's more of like the industry that you tend to work in and how things are done in those industry. Because I've seen the banking in Nigeria, for example, things they are doing, it goes along a lot with what banking here are doing. But though when it comes to the culture part of it, there are also some part of it that is a little bit, that might be different. But those are not really cybersecurity, right? It's a little bit outside of cyber. For example, how they protect your phone in London or in UK is different from the way they do in Nigeria, for
Okay.
example. I've seen situations whereby you even maybe lose your money buying stuff online to some, maybe fraudulent platform, and you can get the banks here in the UK to get the money back for you, right?
Yeah.
That might not be the case in somewhere like Nigeria, whereby if you buy something on a fraudulent website, The bank is not
Yeah, there are no protections in place for that, regulations. And it's interesting because when you were talking about, I thought of the other thing, like the mobile money, like they have in which is a huge thing in Ghana, Nigeria, and like other places like, Kenya and so forth. It's a whole different kind of, thread landscape in terms of how that even handles money, moves from one person to another and so forth. So yeah, absolutely. In speaking of community, I do want to touch about something because voices in cybersecurity and voices in Africa. I saw that you were one of the top 50 voices in Africa in tech. I want to hear a little bit about that. How and first of all, congrats on that And I just wanted to say thank you for actually being a voice in Africa in tech, especially in cybersecurity, because I do see a lot of the things that you do community wise on LinkedIn and all of those other platforms. So congratulations on that. But I wanted to see if you wanted to tell me a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, of course. I've always been, while I was in Nigeria 6, 7 years ago, I used to be involved in a lot of, community. I was a Toastmaster. I was a president of a Toastmasters club. I was a part of Session, Cybersecurity Expert Coalition of Nigeria. I do all kind of stuff when it comes to cybersecurity in Nigeria, right? And I think the award comes from the perspective of the open source and cybersecurity that I was explaining earlier, whereby we have been supporting early stage startup, focus on early stage startup that doesn't have those kind of funds to buy cybersecurity services from those companies. And for one reason or the other, they require cybersecurity service. Sometimes some of these companies might not really require them, but you see in some cases whereby they are struggling with some cybersecurity challenge or the other, and they do not have the expertise to manage them. They do not have the fund to actually buy or, purchase the cybersecurity services from any of these MSSP and managed service providers and stuff like that. We are able to come in and give them those support because I just believe that, innovative startup are just the guys that build, the world that we have, make the world better place, building amazing technology for us to use. And if they require those kind of support, I'm able to, provide it for them. And to be honest with you, right, this is not just about me because, I think the most part of the work is done by the volunteers that we have within the community, because I have to, engage volunteers to come on board. I have to sell it to other guys to come on board. And it has been really great. A lot of people love the idea of what we are doing. They always apply to join our volunteer, platform.
Yeah, great insight. Yeah, great insight. Two things that I think I thought of while you were saying that. Well, we're going to talk about how it came to be as far as cybersecurity in open source. Maybe let's start off of there, and then probably since you talked about volunteering and even as far as like people who will use your services, maybe we can talk about what that application process looks like, or how do you even say, how do I get to get Jamiu's services or cybersecurity and open source services? But maybe let's start off with how that came to be in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I was also trying to build a startup, some few years back. I was trying to build an AI. I was building an AI startup, right? I was trying to build an AI startup, an AI system. We have ChatGPT in the West right now, whereby you can ask them any question. How do I deploy Kubernetes on AWS, on Azure, something like that? And then it's going to give you step by step, on how to achieve that. But most of the time, there's a confusion. It doesn't have the full context and all of that. So what I was trying to do some few years back is to see if, I'm able to build an AI system that you can share your screen with, right? You can share your screen with it, and then it's able to see your entire screen. It can listen to you as well. And then you can tell it exactly what you need to do. You can tell it, I want to deploy a virtual machine on Azure, right? Or AWS. And then it's going to see your screen and it's going to it's going to come up with a cursor on your screen. And the cursor on your screen is going to tell you exactly where you need to click and exactly what you need to do. So it's just going to take you step by step through what you need to do. But, I tried to build it. I mean, for like 8 months, we are trying to crack it, trying to take the screen. There are a lot of, technical, optimization that needs to be done because it has to be, passing the images, the video, it's an video, but it's going to cut it to like small images, take it to the AI understand it and then, guide it through exactly what you need to do. And then it must be in real time, right? So, I mean, we had a lot of struggle trying to build that.
Yeah, I can imagine that being very tough. But what I would say is with the introduction of like, I mean, I know that's very recent, like MCP servers and AI. And I know we're shifting a little bit, but yeah, since you brought it up, with MCP servers, the introduction of MCP servers like last November and so forth, will that be something that,
Yes.
we see some
Yes,
progress or help? And yeah,
I think someone is gonna build it at the end of the day. Some guys were building something similar. They raised about 60 million end of last year, around I think around August of last year. That was close to the time that we shut down as well. And I think those guys will probably get closer to what we are trying to do. And I think but then when I stopped building the startup, I was just looking. I'm the kind of person that I work all the time. Really, I pretty much I'm the kind of person that kind of believe that I don't really believe in work-life balance, to be honest. If I'm not
oh
working,
god,
but
that's
I know it's a
rough.
little bit,
I
I know it's a
totally
little bit controversial, right?
yeah.
But I have only few things to do to work or family, right? And family as well. I do a lot of things, but if I'm not like with family, I'm always working.
Yeah.
I
You're
pretty
trying to
much
stay busy all the time. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I'm not doubtful of that because I see all your stuff like, on LinkedIn. You're always everywhere and traveling and doing some work.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
let's
so when
talk
I
more
when when,
about
when I stopped the startup, I even that's why I was just looking at how can I do something interesting. That's when I started, the open source cyber just to start supporting, innovative startup.
yeah.
Since I can build something of my own, maybe I can build something of my own. Maybe all
Yeah.
I have to do is to support other guys building something. So
Yeah. So
why
does
not?
open source and cybersecurity only work with cyber security startups or just anything that's a startup
No,
so long as it's in
no.
tech?
No. So the idea is that we are providing cybersecurity services to startup, to early stage startup.
Mm.
So yeah, it's not about cybersecurity startup. You can be building fintech. If you have issues, you are building an AI startup. You have some cybersecurity challenges that you're struggling with. You can talk to us. You're building whatever it is you're building. In as much as it's not a business, it's a startup. It's something that have the potential to grow 10, 20x, and
Yeah.
also at the early stage. It's not like you've raised £1 million or
Yes,
$1 million.
makes sense.
If you have raised if you raised a lot of money, you should be able to pay for those kind of services.
Yeah.
Except if you can prove to us that you have a very straight runway and you do not have enough funds to buy those services, we can
Makes
still
sense. So in
still
case I
support.
do have some folks that are listening that have startups right now and looking to use some of the services that you provide, mind you, as I said in the beginning, zero cost service, almost zero cost service,
Yeah,
right? So
that's
you're pretty much like doing this as a community effort.
yeah.
How do they reach out to you? I mean, I know you have like the other platforms such as LinkedIn and so forth, but how do they reach
Yeah,
out to you as far as
Yeah,
open
we have a
source?
website. We have a website, very easy to use. Founders apply, volunteers. If you're a founder, you can just apply as a founder, tell us what you're doing, schedule a call, we do a discovery call with you. You ask us questions, whatever you need. You just tell us what you need. You can say, oh, we are struggling with web application firewall, these things. We say, okay. And then we review with you. We give you all the options. This is what you can use. This is what you can use. These are paid services. These are free services that you can use. If you're going for free services, we also give you support. Maybe you want to use an open source tool to do it. We can also give you support in terms of implementing it. Maybe you decide that, okay, I'm going to use open source. Yes, okay, you can create a virtual machine within your environment. We help you to deploy it. We help you test it, set it up, and then we hand it over to you. Do it. And if you have any talent, we can come in and just give support. And if it's just some advice that you need, we just want to understand how this works. We give you those advice as well. Based on what you need, we are able to provide those services for you pretty much. So it's just going to be an open conversation for you to have an expert that you can talk to and get those kind of advisory service and technical support as you require them.
Awesome, awesome. You since you mentioned something like you said, hey, we're having issues with WAF and so forth. I assume there's a wide range of other things that people might come to you about.
Yeah,
And one of the biggest things we do in most enterprises is phishing campaigns, right? Just to kind of see where we are. I
yeah,
read an article that you wrote on phishing, and I want to call out something you said in the last paragraph. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. And I just want to hear what you mean by that. And if you can elaborate on it. You said it is up to your team to evaluate and decide if the phishing simulation is worth it or if there's a need to start planning for a more technology centric approach that allows users to freely work without employee security paranoia. I love that statement, and I want to hear it from you if you can break it down
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I think I wrote that article about 2 years ago, whereby I was arguing for the fact that I don't believe in phishing campaigns. I think phishing campaigns makes your team to become paranoid, to become skeptical, to be slow. They are always wondering, Is this a phishing test again? Is it a phishing, email?" They are always scared. And I strongly believe that you should focus more on technological, solution to this, right? The truth is, if you send a phishing email to me with where we are today, even though I'm a security expert, I'll probably struggle to identify that as a phishing email. If you do it well,
And that's very true. Like a lot of times you would be surprised how many of us security folks actually fail this phishing test. So
yeah,
I'm like, I feel sorry for like the regular person. Like imagine.
because if you do a good job, there's no way, with just your human eyes, you can see that this is a phishing email. There are some cues that you can actually follow. For example, if someone is saying that, "Oh, take this receipt," and you are not expecting any receipts, that way I know that no, you are probably not talking to me, right?
Yeah.
I can jump down and say, "I'm not expecting any receipt. I didn't buy anything. Why do I get any receipt?" Right? Those ones are different. But when it comes to checking things like your domain, your URL, all those things that you use, look for, they are so different now. They can
Yeah.
compose them in a way. I mean, we have seen threat actors that they are now teams of 100 guys. They have graphics designer. It's not just one person,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. It's you're
scripting and
right.
just
It's an
they have.
enterprise. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So it's very hard for you to, but your system, your technology can detect them better. An AI system will scan the email, we scan all the URL, and we check, is this URL correct or not? It will check it faster than any human being eye can see those. So why do you disturb the guys? The guys for finance try to, these guys work so hard, to be honest with you, right? I work with a lot of them, people in service delivery, in sales. Those guys work very, very long hour trying to meet, their sales numbers, trying to, get things done. So don't bother them. We are supposed to be business enabler, making
Yes,
sure that we
absolutely.
remove all those, bottlenecks from there, not too hard to it. So I think if we as technology, team and the security team, we have to decide, we have to evaluate, does phishing simulation had so much value in this case, or should we focus on? I saw some of my colleagues were posting something, and I asked him that, he was talking about why phishing is extremely important and all of that. And I told him, if your security is based on your team identifying phishing email, right? You need to really think of what you are doing. Because if you think, or if you are saying that if someone within your team click a phishing email and all your security apparatus is down, right?
Yeah.
That means, if someone click a phishing email and then they're able to hack you, you need to really think about what kind of security
Yeah.
technology that
What
you
kind of
have.
setup was that to begin with, right?
Because I don't care. I mean, I will say, I want to click on a phishing email. That's the first thing I want to do within an environment. I want to click on the fish. I want to click on the
Yeah, I think
malware.
that's where you are getting at, as in like embrace what we know is gonna happen. But once we do
Exactly.
embrace that,
Yeah,
then
and I
we
want to
are better
see
prepared to
how you will respond to it. Are your guys
exactly,
able to pick
exactly.
it
I
up?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see, is your guys able to, when I click on phishing email, I click on the malware, is your ADR going to isolate the file immediately?
Yeah.
Is your endpoint going to pick it up? Are you going to block it? Do you have automation that pick these things up and
That's
make sure
very
that,
interesting.
that's
I
where I
love
want
that
to see guys
perspective.
going. Yeah.
Yeah, that was why that statement stood out to me. I was like, this is interesting. Like, yeah, we embrace it. And if we do embrace it, then we know how to better equip ourselves and fight for it and prepare for it and so forth. And like you mentioned, me not clicking on a phishing email is definitely not cyber defense in depth. If I don't have any other protections in place, and the only
Exactly.
guarantee is like, oh, somehow I'm supposed to identify this and not click on it. Because, like I said, a lot of us in security actually fail those like phishing tests. When you see the numbers is always interesting. So can't imagine. Awesome, awesome. There was another thing I wanted to talk about. I saw that you were also you recently, or I don't know how long ago that was, but you spoke at cybersecurity mentoring group, and you were talking about beyond shift left, runtime apps, and API security. Can we, spend just a little bit of time on that? Because I found that very interesting as well too. So you're thinking like
Yeah,
Ahmed is
yeah.
really gone and like looked up everything.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been a lot of conversation with ships led, which is really great. Making sure that developers, the code is great, they are using the right libraries and frameworks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Vulnerabilities are treated, best, good coding practice and all of that. But alongside that is also the runtime protection, right? The ability to make sure that those threats does not even get to those vulnerability at all. So yeah, I've been working on runtime protection for some time now. We've been looking at how to make sure that those traffic, if someone is making a request that is malicious, we're able to capture that. We're able to stop it before they even get to the vulnerability they are trying to exploit at the back end, right?
Yeah.
So I just found that very, very interesting as well. Because a lot of time, developers struggle to eliminate all of these vulnerabilities, or sometimes they say they have done it, they have not. Or sometimes it's just so much that they tend to bypass it for some time. They'll say, oh, we have,
We have other
16,
priorities.
yeah, 16 things were flagged for high priority, 80 things were flagged for medium. Let's solve the high priority.
Yeah,
This
it's
80
it's it's
things for
always
medium is
that, and I'm in product security nowadays, so or for a while, so it's interesting. I recently learned a new phrase from a colleague, and he said, "Oh, developer is kin," as in like like they're the ones shipping out products. They get to kind of say what they want to do and not do. Hence, shift left being a little bit of a struggle for us. I've also like as another person would say, rather than shift left, let's start left. What do you think about that? Like, I think
I
it's
think
actually interesting philosophy as well
I
too,
think
right? So
I think it's right. I think this is the first time I'm hearing that start left.
yeah,
I mean, that sounds very interesting. But yeah, it's just always a lot of struggle making sure that
yeah,
all of those things are kept within the right kind of levels of vulnerabilities that you want to see
yeah,
within those kind
absolutely,
of, yeah.
absolutely.
So what we do is that with something like a web and API security platform from the runtime perspective, and so most of the time, the traffic pass through maybe some CDN platform, and then at those edge, we are monitoring the traffic at those edge. So if someone is trying to exploit even if it's a low vulnerability that you have within your code, and someone is trying to exploit that, send the traffic that is malicious, trying to request for more than what they should be requesting, trying to, all of those things, we can see them from the head and drop those traffic immediately. So even if you have all the vulnerabilities within your code, but then you still have to make sure that, and most of the time we don't tell this developer because
Yeah,
within the team that I currently work, we probably have maybe 3,000 developers, right?
mhm,
And they are
yeah,
building amazing e-commerce platform, one of the largest European e-commerce platform they're building, right? And they make sure that those vulnerabilities are removed. From my team, what we make sure is that even if someone is trying to make those attempts to exploit either the vulnerabilities there or not, we will see those traffic and we will drop them before they
yeah.
even get to our origin at all, which is our own hosting.
Makes sense.
Before
Makes sense.
which I found very interesting.
Makes sense.
And that's why we're trying to enlighten people that okay, beyond the shift left, you have to start thinking about how to make sure that those traffic. I mean, now it comes to the perspective of cyber
Yeah.
from the foundation, right? Layered defense, right?
Yes,
Whereby we
absolutely.
have those defense at different levels at the runtime, at the application level as well within your code.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I know that article is on I don't know, is there like a video of that talk somewhere? Because I couldn't
Yeah,
find
I
all.
think
I
it's on
just saw the
YouTube.
excerpt.
It's on YouTube. I believe it's on
Okay,
YouTube.
okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
it
Because
was a it
okay,
was a
I'll link
webinar
that.
kind
I'll
of
link
thing.
that. We'll share that. I'll link that also in the video description here, so viewers can kind of pivot to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to pivot into something because I cannot interview you, and we don't talk about this. I'm probably going to talk about this with every guest I have. With the advent of AI, how has that either helped us or makes our job even more difficult in cyber?
I think I think it's both ways. It has made our work a little bit much easier. I was having a discussion with a colleague. I talked to a lot of my friends from where I work before now. I make a very good relationship with a lot of guys that I work with, and I was asking a guy where he was working on a particular project. I think it was along detection engineering or something along that line. And I asked him that how is it doing and stuff like that. And our discussion, okay, I started with a discussion, with some guys in a separate group whereby I say that if you have 5 years experience in software development, right? You have 5 years experience as a software developer, writing Python and all kind of stuff. Software developer, proper software developer. And eventually you move to cyber and you use another 5 years in cybersecurity, making 10 years. And I say that that person with 10 years experience, 5 years in software development, 5 years in cybersecurity would probably do better in the next 10 years than someone that has just cybersecurity experience. And we are just arguing. I'm not sure. I know this is a little bit controversial because
I was gonna say it's not at all, because I come from, I also come from a dev background, and for some reason I do believe that a lot of developers who veer into cyber makes better cyber professionals for me, in my opinion, because they understand what developers do, and it's not even because they know how to code or whatever. They understand, because a lot of times we propose solutions, and we don't like, the solutions are not realistic, or they match what they see on the ground, right? Hence, I do have a soft spot for product teams, because you kind of tend to understand where they come from with some example. Fix this patch and say this library they're using. If there's no patch for it, like, how do we fix it, right? If it's just kind of like those things. So yeah, I know. So I kind of tend to believe that as well too, a little bit.
Oh, you cool. So I guess I guess I'm kind of right.
I'm not saying it makes any other cyber professional not as great. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean, it makes a lot of cyber guys really, really angry with me. And for some reason, I never worked as a software developer myself, right? So I can't say I'm within I'm within the group of people that have 5 years experience as a software developer. No, because I did a bit of software development, but I never really worked. It's different. It's different from software.
You doing it full time, right? Yeah.
And working software developer for 5 years. It's totally different, right? Because you do something, you write a lot of stuff. You can't compare, right? So I'm not part of them as well. But even with that, I still recognize that, I've worked with a lot of guys, and I see that, if you have those software understanding, and if you work in that environment, you kind of do a little bit better. You might not have core understanding of how to deploy proper Splunk right now, or how to set up the indexer, and all those kind of stuff. No, you might not have them, but along the line, even all those setting up of indexer, setting up for some of this technical stuff that we're doing now are getting not that very important anymore, because those things are being automated. You don't have to do a lot of config a lot again, because even the developers are creating those platforms to be much more easier to use. I mean, it's totally different when you look at Microsoft Sentinel, because I do cybersecurity training, but focused on Microsoft most of the time, Microsoft stack, and it's just so easy than what we used to do with Splunk and some other ones like config. So yeah, so I was now discussing with the guy, and I said, how is he doing on the work? He said to me, ChatGPT, man, ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, man, I like that. Anyway, I can get into something else with that, but we can save it for another time, because I know you're gonna come back on this show. This is where I move to one of our segments where I call the rapid fire questions, where it's a quick game we play. I throw a bunch of questions at you. You tell me the first thing that comes to mind, and we can kind of chat about some of the answers after that if you want. So let me know when you're ready to play, and it's just I'll kind of give you a heads up on what it's gonna be, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay. Yeah.
It sounds good. Let's talk about consulting. One word that defines effective consulting. Value. Nice. And then let's talk about culture. Most valuable lesson from working across 3 continents.
Almost the same.
Almost the same, like that. And let's talk about community. One phrase that captures.
Almost the same. I mean, almost the same in terms of it doesn't matter where you are. The cyber is still the cyber, right?
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. I think we talked about that earlier on, right? Yeah. For community, one phrase that captures the power of community in cybersecurity.
I think beyond the work, community is just really important for us to build. Yeah.
And let's talk about the future. In one word, what is next for cybersecurity? That's a loaded question, but
that one is easy. Reinforcement learning.
Reinforcement learning. Wow, I like that. Can you explain that?
Yeah. I mean, we detections that we do right now is based on a lot of rules. And I think in the next in coming years, those rules are gonna be scrapped and we're gonna move to machine learning and specifically reinforcement learning, whereby the system is able to learn from every decision it's making and is able to categorize them. If it makes the right decision, it's gonna get a reward. If it makes the bad decision, it's gonna get
that is interesting. So initially, when you said reinforcement learning, I was actually been thinking of it from the people perspective, but you're talking of the technology perspective. That's even
technology perspective.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's gonna take over the whole detection systems that we have right now, and it's already doing that. But they are still on the machine learning. A lot of them, most of it. I'm also doing a PhD in cybersecurity and AI. Nice. So I've been doing a lot of reading on reinforcement learning, AI in cyber, AI, ML in cyber, and the part that I've been really, really interesting is the ML, machine learning in cybersecurity, the supervised and the unsupervised. But those ones are being used right now. But the part that people are looking at now is the reinforcement learning, whereby you don't need so much of data because right now they need a lot of data for you, and then you have to label them for the supervised. You have to for the unsupervised. Right now,
that's very interesting.
But the reinforcement learning, I think, is going to change a lot and a lot of things in cyber as we go ahead.
That's very interesting. Wow. Well, I couldn't this was an absolutely enjoyable conversation, and I couldn't say thank you enough for coming on and chatting about a wide range of things and so forth. As we kind of wrap up, I would absolutely love to hear any last words from you. And, I, especially for you, some of my viewers tend to be from the regions that you and I are from originally. And I love that, people get some kind of inspiration from these and see what you're doing, people like us are doing, and, kind of how we can reinforce that, look, this is something that, we can get into as well. So I would love to hear any last words you have in that regard.
I mean, a number of things. The first one is if you're just starting in cybersecurity, try to learn as quickly as you can. Try to focus on something that sells in the market. Look at something that really sells in the market. So I see a lot of people, because for the past 5 years, I've been doing training for people in cybersecurity. And I see them, they want to get into cyber, or they've started and then they started learning cybersecurity. They want to get into cybersecurity and they do a lot of WASO, open source security tools and all of that. They are really good. I love open source, but if you are in Western community, let's say UK, US, Canada, Australia, all of that, try to learn something commercialized ourselves, like Microsoft Security Stack. That's what I teach my students now, right? Because it's like the easiest way for you to get into the market easily, right? Because you have understanding of almost everything, from your data loss prevention to your secure service edge, to your cloud security, to your CASB, to your EDR, to your SIM. Microsoft has everything. I mean, if you are not doing Microsoft, you'll probably be thinking of, I need to learn Zscaler, Netscope, CrowdStrike, all of this technology, Wiz, and all of it. But if you focus on Microsoft, you will learn each of those technology from Microsoft's perspective. They have Defender for cloud apps, Defender for clouds, Purview. It's just amazing the amount of knowledge, that you can get and the kind of policies and stuff that you create. So if you're just getting started, jump into that, learn it as fast as you can, and you can get a job. But for some of us that we are not just starting, I think I said it in one of my conversations a few weeks ago, that it's just like we have in finance, that there are stages to things that you need to do. For example, you have to pay your debts, you have to have your emergency fund, you have to do this, just stages of things that you need to do with your finance. You need to have the same thing for your cybersecurity career as well, right? If you're at the top, you have to start thinking of what next should I do going on from here, right? What next should I do? What is that important thing that I need to do, that I need to position myself now? For example, it can be quantum security, right? A lot of people are saying that AI is going to take a lot of our jobs, but new jobs are going to be created. Some of the places that those new jobs are going to be created is, for example, quantum security. Right. A lot of people are building quantum technology right now. They are putting a lot of money into quantum.
Yeah. I have a different perspective of the AI taking our jobs. I always use the analogy, since the typewriter was created, the scribes didn't stop writing and it just made their job better. And Word made the typewriter better and so forth. So it's just you upskill.
that's how I feel as well. I mean, you have to upskill, which is what I'm saying, but I'm still a little bit skeptical about this, right? Because a lot of people say, oh, AI is not going to take the job and take your job. It's going to take the job of guys that are not using AI, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the common thing that everybody say. But I
Yeah.
don't seem to think that's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm
I
thinking
think it's a new skill set. And like, for example, like I see people use ChatGPT, right? It's, there are people who use it, and then sometimes, like, I have people who would say, hey, I'm looking for them, like, oh, just, whatever, try starting with ChatGPT or something. And they'll say, how come I didn't find them? Like, well, you just have to know how to prompt it better, right? So like you said, it's a skill that will still require certain skill to get what you want. So
exactly. But even going further from there is that I feel like AI will get to a point that is, I mean, those of us using ChatGPT and AI to do our work, I use it a lot. In fact, I use it in an amazing way. I can learn anything within few hours with just ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to read a massive book again.
Yeah.
Right. I can just go
absolutely.
into AI
more very targeted. More very
yes,
targeted.
they can say, I want to learn reinforcement learning for cybersecurity. Let's start with where are the places that reinforcement learning or any kind of AI would have impact on cyber.
Yes.
And then it will list them out. And then from there, you just keep prompting, breaking the old technology space down. And then within few hours, you have a good understanding of that.
Awesome.
Right? Which is really good. But beyond that, I feel like AI will get to a point in the future whereby even we that we are using AI is just going to kick us out eventually. It's going to get to a point that it's going to know that, oh, I think for this enterprise environment, we need a WAF.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking it's going to get to a point that it's going to make a payment for the WAF, deploy it itself.
Oh gosh,
configure
it stuff. No, God, yeah. Now you're starting to scare me. Okay, that's good. Jamiu, oh my God, like
we need a new branch.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna pay for it. There's a new opening and at I Street, a new office. It's gonna
That's crazy. That's crazy.
It's gonna send an email to the guys to go clean the place up.
That's scary. Well, anyway, I know we can keep talking and talking. But this has been amazing. Like one of the best conversations in a while again, and I can't say thank you enough for joining and coming on and sharing your insights and so forth. And hopefully our viewers enjoyed our conversation as well too, and all the different topics and things we touched on. So thank you for coming on and
really good.
Yeah,
thanks a lot for inviting me. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the good work here. I really loved it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.